Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm very well. Yourself?
Good, good. I think this is our first interview, right?
I think definitely the first one in Bahrain,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's our
I did
first.
two with your brother. One is missing, still missing, and he's a bit mad at me, but we'll manage that later. How was your visit in Bahrain so far?
It's been good. It's been short so far, but I'm super excited to be for the first time in my life in Bahrain and discovering your country.
First time in your life in Bahrain?
Yeah.
Usually your brother, of course, who handles...
My brother comes more often, of course, since he lives in Dubai. But for me, it's the first time I came. Didn't realize we're so close, so I have to come back.
Yeah. And yesterday you had an event in Dubai, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
Dubai, you've been there a couple of times.
Oh, many times.
Yeah.
The big Moser fan community, a lot of friends in Dubai. As I said, my brother lives there. We've been partnered with Sediki for many years. Dubai is a hub for us.
Amazing. And your visit to Bahrain is a special one. This is
very special. Very special because what we're discovering here, which is kind of our first boutique in the region. We had a few boutiques open in other markets, but not in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very excited to be able to do that here with Project 8 in Bahrain.
Actually, I'm very excited too, because having a boutique in a country or in a region, really, to us like watch lovers, that's a confirmation of the brand is doing really well in the region.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to you as a brand to have boutiques? And because this is your third, fourth?
Boutique, official boutique, I think third or fourth. It depends how you count.
Yeah.
And the plan is to have probably 10 to 15 worldwide. Mm-hmm. So there's probably going to be 2 here in the region. The next one would be in Dubai. We have one in Hong Kong, one in China, in Shanghai, one in Tokyo, mm-hmm. which is a bit like this, 2 brands together, sharing with Richard Mille there. And then we have one in the US before the end of the year. And then we're looking at a handful of major cities around the world.
Great. And why is it important for you to have a boutique? Like your identity?
Again, I think it's, when I started with Moser, we were happy to have a window of about this size, you know. I remember, I think in the Middle East, the first year in 2013, we sold 2 watches for Moser, you know. So now to have the possibility to have something like this is, for me, first, my own pride, like a statement and an achievement. But I think also it's a place where people can come and discover a little bit more about our brand, what we stand for, you know, the choice of the materials, the fact that there are elements about our history, the statue of our founder, the picture of our family.
Yeah,
a few small elements. It expresses also, Moser is about tradition, but avant-garde at the same time. It's about not being kind of fancy luxury, but rather elegant, and modern luxury, and I think our boutiques represent that. So I think a boutique is a good opportunity. I call it like the small brand temples where people can come and discover a little bit more about the brand. Definitely more than if you go in a store where there's 100 brands or 30 brands or 25 brands, whatever, and you just have a window and you need to express what your brand stands for.
Yeah. And that actually goes to my comment of like a community.
Exactly.
Like we're a bit crazy sometimes that we visit these places. So the guys in Kuwait know me. They go like every 2-3 weeks. I go to this boutique and sit. It's not about only purchasing the watch, but even the relationships you have with
the relationship.
But I wanna ask you about the design identity.
Yeah.
Like the first thing, I think the first boutique I saw, which is very similar to this, I was like shocked. Okay. Like concrete and the blue, and then you have the blue room. I think. What do you have a name for it?
The VIP room. You know who designed it? Maybe you know him. His name is Second.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We did the whole thing.
We came up with the concept, and then we worked with people who know how to
design. Yeah.
But Second is a long-time friend. I think he has a good eye for design, mm-hmm. and that's why we did this collaboration with him years ago with the eraser, which was a very provocative but very successful project where basically we asked him to say, how would you represent Moser with your art? And then I said, you know, we're struggling in developing a concept of a boutique that wouldn't stand out, that wouldn't be us, which wouldn't be like taking the most fancy wood, the most fancy stone.
Yeah.
What would it be Moser in your eyes? And he was very extreme in his concepts, and we loved it. And then obviously his concept was way more crazy than what we could actually make. They were like a lot of crazy elements in there. But I think we kind of managed to crystallize the idea, which I think he managed to put in words and in visuals.
Amazing, because I thought your answer would be like this fancy art place or this fancy architecture office, you know.
But I mean, again, we love to say, if you look at our products, there's no logo on it. The reason we always say the product before the brand, right? We are the brand. We design the watches, we communicate about the watches, we sell those watches.
You manufacture the watches.
The star of what we do is the product. So of course, we see watches as art pieces, especially in our quantities. That's what the beauty of independent brands is about, creating very few, very curated products, pushing the boundaries of innovation, of technology, and those things. That's why there's independent brands.
True.
And that's why there's a market for us, and that's why it's been so popular recently, because people realize there's so much value in those products. And from our perspective, we want to treat them, again, as a piece of art. So of course, if you come in one of our boutiques, you see a showcase like this one where the watch is set vertically. It's a little bit like a painting on the wall. So of course there's a little bit of that, but at the same time it's still a shop. So you need to make sure it's a little bit of both. But I think we manage, thanks to Second, to strike a pretty good balance.
No, I love it. When I saw it, I was really impressed, to be honest. And talking about your art and design, I want to move a bit into the products. I've seen you're evolving a few of your designs. One of them is the logo. And I think you call it the invisible logo, which is a beautiful way. Can you explain how you do it? Or you don't want to get into the details?
No, of course, I'm happy to explain it. A lot of people believe that it's engraved in the dial. It's actually applied on top of the dial. So it's an applied transparent logo. So rather than putting color, we make it fully transparent. And you only see it when you play with the light.
Yeah.
Again, it's an evolution. Why do we change those elements? First, I think a brand is alive. A brand should never be static. If you remain too static, you die. And that's why we need to constantly evolve. There are phases where you find your codes and you establish them, and therefore you need to make the entire collection evolve. That's what we're doing right now with the transparent logo. We have a lot of products which don't have the transparent logo, but we cannot do it from one day to the other. So we're slowly migrating towards the transparent logo. We have the concept watches, which were like the first watches without logo, and they will continue to be like that. There's a lot of things also on the movement side. Mm-hmm. We're also changing a few of the codes there, especially because we have more and more steel with integrated bracelet watch, especially the Streamliner, where we wanted to create more contrast. So if you look at our perpetual calendar that we introduced 2 years ago, we have a darker gray finishing on the movement. This is something that is slowly coming into the rest of the different families of movement. We will see it very soon on the chrono, and then it will follow with the different other movements. So again, we believe there's always constant evolution. We shouldn't stand still. There needs to be consistency and continuity, but that doesn't mean you need to be stuck.
Mm-hmm. But that makes your life much harder. Like as you said, some
especially of my team.
Yeah.
True. Like, oh no, we have to change this again.
Yeah,
I'm like, but
some
for the better.
Don't understand that. Some
it's
people
for the better.
Yeah.
But look at
small
Rolex.
Thing.
I mean, it's probably the best example. You would take a classic from Rolex, and you take it. It's still available today, like a Pepsi. One from the 60s and one from today. Still the same product, but it's been constantly evolving, right?
Sure.
And the size maybe needs to be changed by tenths of a millimeter, and the quality of the color, the fitting. I mean, it's the right things. Things have to be evolved. Sometimes it's new technology. Sometimes it's just your brand has evolved, has changed a little bit. You need to adapt. I think it's much better to do it this way than jumps, because if you do big jumps, then you lose the people. Here, it's part of bringing the people with you. And I think we have enough fans that we don't want to lose them.
And you piss them off, exactly. Some brands, if you hold two watches next to each other from exactly the same brand, you feel this is too old and this is too modern and this is
or sometimes it's like one is too much of a, I mean, how can you have, I know it's maybe too extreme, but like a scuba diving watch compared to a very jewelry watch, for example. It should be the same brand. It's not easy. And we have some watches with sapphires on it. We have also some very sporty watches. So we try to keep them consistent. And that's complicated, but therefore you need to have strong codes.
Yeah.
And that's where it's important to have them clear. And if they need to evolve, then you need to slowly evolve through the collection. And that's why it makes my life difficult, but I think even more so with my team. But I told them, if we stand still, people are catching up. Look at the fumé dials. We did fumé dials for many years. Nobody was doing fumé dials. Today, everybody does fumé dials. They even call them the Moser dials. So we need to evolve. We created the enamel dials. We have the Vanta Black dials to be able to continue to push the boundaries. We love to think we're explorers. Yeah. Our founder was an explorer. He was a pioneer. And we try to do the same today. And there's many projects in that matter. The Genesis was one of the latest where we tried to push the boundaries also in different different universe.
Yeah. And you guys now are famous for that. Like and usually we don't see it from like what I like, to be honest with you. I'm just talking about like my passion for Moser, let's say. So that even when you do something that's crazy, we usually in the watch industry, we see it like super, super expensive. It's unattainable if another other brands does it. But one of the things that I know, and you're talking about improvement, is that your new partnership with Agenor, yeah. Let's talk about it a bit.
Well, Moser is very integrated. Has grown quite a lot. We're looking at it. I mean, since we acquired it in 2012 to today, we grew multiples in numbers, in number of people, in quality as well. But there's a few things that we don't do ourselves, and one of them was the movement of the chronograph, which is I believe, the most beautiful and innovative chronograph movement of the 21st century.
Yep.
I think the El Primero is the equivalent of the previous century.
Yeah.
I'm not very objective there, but I really believe the Agenograph is one of the best innovation, and I'm really thankful to Agenor and Mr. Widerrecht Jean-Marc Widerrecht for developing it and spending years on developing this. And it has become one of our key movement, but it's not something that we own. And for me, as a manufacturer integrated, where we claim that we do pretty much all the elements in our movements, this was one that was a little bit outside. At the same time, it's a small family business. Agenor is a small family business working with a handful of very good brands. But as a small movement developer and provider, it's not an easy life. It's much easier sometimes to be a brand, especially when it works well. But for me, it was important to make sure that they don't focus on finance. They don't focus on how do we grow in the future, etc. They focus on creating, innovating, without the stress of managing the business,
the money.
So it's their business. They keep the majority. It's their thing, but we are there to help them and give them a certain security. And again, it's another Swiss family, also with a generation of the similar age with like my brothers, two brothers running the business. So it's fun to work with those guys. We have tons of ideas we can do together. We want them to continue to work with the other clients. I'll be sitting on the board, but without any visibility on the external projects, just making sure that our business work well, because it's important for me. It's securing my business, but also securing the clients. They want to make sure that the movements we have developed, we will manage to service, we will manage to make them evolve, and we're providing the full security. A big part of the job of a CEO is not only to create the vision, but is to manage the contingency plans, secure the risks. And one of them is to say, well, this is a movement that we don't have fully in our hands. How do we change that? And this time we took a participation in the company.
Amazing. And when I saw that news, one of the things that got to my mind is that, are you going to be working with them on new movements?
Of course.
So yeah.
Of course, and it's, Switzerland is a very small country. It's a little bit bigger than Bahrain, but it's a very small country. But we're very multicultural as well. We have the Swiss Germans and the Swiss French. I grew up in the Swiss French. I now live in the Swiss German part. Schaffhausen is on the border to Germany, so that means we're very different. The Swiss Germans are very, into details and sometimes not very flexible. Maybe the Swiss French are a little bit more creative, crazy, and not always as structured. It's a bit of a caricature, but that's the way sometimes people look at it from in Swiss perspective. To some extent, it's a bit like that. I think I have an amazing team in Schaffhausen. They have developed amazing stuff. But one of their big strengths is about working on making movements evolve and re-engineering and optimizing and making sure that they're reliable, high quality, etc. And I think that's where we can add a lot of value also to Agenor. They have crazy ideas, but very small volume. So it's difficult sometimes to bring something that is first a prototype, then become like a pre-series, where you don't have huge volume to test and improve. But with the two teams working together, then it's definitely a good formula to bring the highest creativity with the highest quality.
Amazing. So you played around with the high horology, let's say, the minute repeaters, you do tourbillons, and actually one of the most accessible tourbillons in the market. Is there a new complication you want to work on towards thinking about? If they're allowed to say a hint or...
I mean, there's not... I mean, we have one of the amazing perpetual calendar, one of the most amazing chronograph.
Yeah.
The minute repeater is... it's one of my favorite movements at Moser because it really highlights the minute repeater. An amazing tourbillon, as you said. So there's a lot of the complications, and not only complications, it's the tourbillon, it's not a complication, but there's a lot of ways to innovate. My dream, there's all others, but one of my dreams is to combine some of those. Is to go into grande complication, so take minute repeater, chronograph, perpetual calendar, and mix all those things together, but keeping the Moser codes and essence. And that's a big challenge. That's years of work. So these are the things we're working on. We're working on new models. That's also where Agenor can help us a lot. They're very good at creating modules. We're working on smaller movements. Skeleton is something we started with the Pioneer cylindrical tourbillon skeleton, which is big skeleton, very spectacular, very three-dimensional. But we want that to evolve to be able to introduce it in other collections in the future. And as I just mentioned, smaller movements, slimmer movements is also a field in which we're working on. The smaller watches we have right now are 38 millimeters, but the movements are quite thick. So if we want to go even smaller, we will need slimmer movements.
And it's a hard job to do, because I know lots of people want to talk about watchmaking. It's really easy to create a big watch. So if you want complications, some companies does it.
It's difficult to make smaller, and it's difficult to make simple.
And that's what that's the whole perpetual, that's the whole perpetual.
But the perpetual defined our codes. That's where we said that if we make a chronograph, it has to be at the level of the perpetual, and that's where Agenor helped us so much. They created a chronograph, everything at the center. It doesn't look like a chronograph, but it's actually a chronograph that, by the way, gives the time. But it's for me the equivalent of the perpetual from Moser. It's the Agenograph, and I'm so happy now that we have those. It's part of our DNA now. It's our two movements.
Amazing. So let's wrap up with one question. I know you're wearing the Streamliner.
Yes.
And the Streamliner is getting bigger and bigger part of Moser. And do you remember
control? We control. We try really. If you look at the launches, a lot are. I mean, the cylindrical tourbillon was Pioneer. The enamel dials is in the Endeavor. So we try to make sure that we continue with our 4 collections. Endeavor, classic, elegant. Pioneer is our everyday watch. Heritage based on the museum pieces, and then the Streamliner. We could do everything in Streamliner. We know it would sell. The rest sells very well. It's very difficult to create steel bracelet, etc. So for me, it's very important to keep 4 pillars. But yes, Streamliner is very strong.
Do you remember we met in 2018, or I think 18 or 19 Dubai Watch Week, and you were wearing the Streamliner?
It was 19.
19, and you didn't announce it, and you told me that
I teased it to you.
Yes, exactly. And I'm gonna make a confession now. When I first saw it, it was really interesting, but I was like, I love Moser. It wasn't for me. I mean, I have a Streamliner chrono. Okay. So it took me...
Like a lot of people.
Exactly. It took me some time to accept the difference, the shape, the thing.
But I think a good design requires that. Otherwise we would have been seeing people in general accept a design easier if it's something they know. So had we done something that looks like a Royal Oak, a Nautilus, an Engineer, people would have accepted it.
Exactly.
Probably faster.
Yeah.
But in the long run, first they would have said, well, it looks like.
Exactly.
It looks like a Nautilus, it looks like a...
Yeah.
And second, they would have got tired of it. What we wanted to create is something that is different. knowing that if you want to be different, you need to create new codes. And if there are new codes, it takes time to accept them.
Yeah.
So the biggest compliment I got are people like you who said, is it Moser? I'm not sure. I was really concerned. I had the same reaction.
That's
the first day I took it on my wrist. It was with my brother, and we were. It's like I don't know if you have children, but the first time I got my first child, I remember looking at her and I was like, what do I do now? You can talk to her. I think a good design, you need to learn. It's like, maybe the baby is not the best example. Music is a better example. I remember the first time, and I use this one a lot, Pink Floyd. I'm a huge fan of Pink Floyd, but I remember when my cousin, who is 2 or 3 years older than me, told me, you gotta buy this, I think it was The Wall, or one of the albums from Atom, Art Mother, I can't remember. But anyway, it was very conceptual music, and the first time I heard it, I was like, what is this? This is not music. And now, 35 years later, or 30 years later, I can't remember when I bought it, I still love it.
You still love it, yeah.
I mean, I was in the car the other day for 2 hours. I listened full album of Pink Floyd, and I got the goosebumps again. That's the difference between something that becomes a classic and something that is pop. Pop music, you will like it, and then 3 months later, there's another fashion tune that comes, and then you forget it. I think a classic takes time to appreciate, to understand, to kind of acquire the codes for yourself. And I'm very happy to see that this is the way the streamliner is evolving, because for me, that's a good sign that potential 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, people will look at it as an icon of maybe the equivalent of, you know, what Royal Oak has become since the 70s. If the streamliner is the Royal Oak of the 2020s, because it was launched in 2020, then we won. Yeah. And that probably might be one of my biggest pride.
Amazing. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate it, and best of luck.
Thank you.